Hello, conscious breathers and infinite beings alike. Devon, aka the Black Airbender, here with,
Gabby Lucia, aka the Inner Healer.
and we're gonna have a talk about energetic hygiene, and we'll go from there. So, your experience with energetic hygiene and why it's important.
So, first, I think it's important to explain what energetic hygiene is, right? Because we talk about physical hygiene, we talk about emotional hygiene, but when it comes to energetic hygiene, we're often very disconnected from what it even means, right? And so, over the day, whenever we're interacting with anything at all, we're picking up energy, right? Whatever we're interacting with, whatever post we see on Instagram, whether we are conscious of it or not, we are taking on some energy. We're interacting with some energy frequency. And so it's really about being mindful of your energetic diet, right? We all have an energetic diet, which is, something to raise your vibration and something to lower your vibration. And it's about caring enough about yourself and about your service to the world to make sure that your own energy is as clear, as loving, as pure as it can be, so that we may be a vessel of universal energy, of expression, of service, of love. Um, so that's what I would say energetic hygiene is. I don't know if you have a different experience of it or what you would like to add to that.
Uh, Energetic hygiene, for me, it's going to what you were saying, how having that emotional intelligence where we can figure out, oh, is this triggering something in me with this post, especially in these times, or um, literally your reactive state, like having that scale of, all right, this is triggering me this way, I should pay less attention to it because of it's triggering me. And it's when you have that intention, it's not like you're running away from it. You actually have a deep reasoning because you care about your energetic body, your emotional state, and that's way different than just running away from problems of the world or in that manner, because you have that deep understanding that the energetic side of your being also feeds your physical side of your being.
Yeah, completely interconnected. I love that you just mentioned triggers because that's actually one of the biggest things that I include, that I incorporate into my coaching work and the work that I do with anybody and all my friends and all my clients and everyone that I come into contact with. Because for me, triggers are actually the portal. Triggers give you feedback, and every trigger makes you bigger. So when you notice a trigger, wherever there's reactivity of any kind, there is a wound, right? Or else it wouldn't touch an energetic nerve. And so what you're really dealing with in that moment when you're being triggered is it's showing you something that is underneath the surface that requires your love and attention, right? So when I get triggered, I immediately go, oh, okay, a younger part of me or some part of me is responding to this. There's definitely something that needs to be brought into alignment in order for this not to affect me in this way, right? So usually I would say that if something's triggering us, it is showing us that there's an unmet need in that moment that we are being brought into awareness of. So what I would say about triggers is that if it's hysterical, it's historical. You're dealing with an old emotion that's coming up. I don't know if you would agree with that. So, over our lives, we accumulate a lot of emotions, and if we don't do anything about them, they just stay in our bodies. We somatize them. So, emotions are energy, and energy is supposed to be. Energy comes from the word. Emotion comes from energy and motion, right? And emotion also comes from the word emote, which in Greek means to move out.
Mm,
Did you know that?
no, I did not know
So
that.
imagine emotions are just packets of energy that want to move out of your body. And we've gotten really good at feeling our joyful emotions, our high vibe emotions, our laughter, our bliss, our fun, our enjoyment. Like we immediately know how to express that, right? How do you express that emotion? How do you make it move? Well, you jump around, you get excited, you laugh, you smile. That is a release of that energy. You're moving and metabolizing that energy in your body, right? But what we don't realize is that We were never taught how to metabolize the other types of energies. So the moment that we feel anger, we make it wrong. And we don't know how to process it, and so we suppress it. Right? The moment we feel sadness, it feels a little bit uncomfortable and we don't even want to go there. So again, we just suppress it. We don't know how to be in that energy and how to sit with that discomfort. There's nothing wrong with discomfort, right? There's absolutely nothing wrong with it. It has wisdom and lessons and gems for us. And so it's really all about allowing yourself to let that emotion move out of your body and to let it do. I always say that every single emotion has a dance sequence. Because if emotion is energy in motion, then imagine if an emotion has maybe like 12 steps, a dance step. And it moves in your body. Like you might feel like anger, like, in your chest, or maybe you feel it in your stomach, or maybe you feel it in your head. You feel it somewhere in your body, but it wants to like complete itself. It wants to do a dance, it wants to do a performance, and it wants to move through you and release itself. But we don't know how to do that when it comes to this whole spectrum of emotions that we have labeled as unfavorable or as not good or as unpleasant.
I like how you said that the trapped emotions inside of you have different steps. And one of those steps also include becoming cancerous in the body. Because in terms of everything, quote unquote, being sound, energy, and frequency, like I always say, what you do frequently is your frequency. And it becomes part of you.
Love that.
And trapping emotions, always getting angry most of the time versus laughter or having calmness in your life, that will start to fester up and start to create quote-unquote dis-ease in the body.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, we store all that stuff in our tissues because anything that doesn't move out stays in, right? So the issues are in the tissues. The issues are in the tissues, and so our body ends up becoming like this pressure cooker of things that we store over time. Why? Because we don't know how to let those energies move out of us the way that they're meant to. If you look at a child going through their emotions, they will feel upset, angry, excited, and loving in the span of 2 minutes. Like they will experience that entire spectrum of emotions in 2 minutes, right? And it's because they know how to move through emotions. If they're sad, they cry. If they're angry, they have a tantrum. Boom, they moved it out of their system. Great. And then they feel joy. And then they move that out of their system. And then they reach their baseline. And we have forgotten that we were born with that innate ability to feel. And that is exactly how we're supposed to move through life and what is like the most healthy way of energy management, emotional management, physical management, right? And so because we've become so afraid of feeling, because our parents never taught us how to feel, or society told us that we weren't allowed to feel, and we have this whole movement of be happy, blah, blah, personal development often is like, yeah, only think positive thoughts, da, 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 da. And it like makes it, like what it's really implying is, we don't want to go into the shadow. We don't want to go into the discomfort. And so that's a natural part of the human experience, right? Like the yin and the yang, like there is as much darkness as there is light. There is as much contraction as there is expansion, right? So that is a natural part of our process, but because we have it in our minds that life should be good all the time, we resist it so much when things go the other way, right? And so when we decide that certain emotions are not good, then we end up not feeling them. So we end up storing them in our bodies. What happens when our body has so much stored, like so many emotions stored? We can only make one of two choices. Either we have a mental breakdown, or we turn off all feelings. So either we like have a mental breakdown, or we become depressed, which is a lot of what we see, diagnosed today in society, or we like just numb ourselves. And how do humans numb themselves? Food, alcohol, social media, overworking, maybe overthinking. Um, like there's also good ways to like not feel, right? That like people maybe they work out a lot or they obsess over healthy eating, or there's so many different things that we do that are like coping mechanisms.
Yeah.
Do you have anything to add on coping mechanisms?
But I like how you also said some people obsess over healthy eating in that sense. It's still eating.
Yeah.
You're still suppressing the blood in a sense.
Yeah, and the thing with eating is that like when you're eating or stuffing yourself, you're literally pushing down the energy of those emotions, right? And so I work with a lot of clients who binge a lot, and there's nothing wrong with that. There's no shame around that whatsoever, right? Because your body is so wise that it knows what to do to release that excess energy. And what does it do? It eats in order to like have some of that energy go into the metabolizing process. So it's releasing energy through eating. So it's like self-regulating, but we need to be aware of how it is that we're self-regulating.
Right. Is it too much binging or just binging like once in a while? And binging once in a while is not a bad thing in itself. So I like how you put that out because people have the bar so high, and in actuality, the body is not at 100% ever. It's not, you're not at full capacity when it comes to the brain.
Yeah.
So what does that tell you about life itself? Nothing is truly complete. Actually, the incomplete is part of the completion in terms of how we react to each other. That complete connection starts to ripple into many different things. And yeah, I, I just want to end up there. But I definitely do want to say I really like how you talked about obsessing over healthy eating in itself, because obsession in itself is still a huge depressive trait.
It's a distraction.
It's a huge distraction.
Yeah. There's nothing wrong with it. We can never shame ourselves for the coping mechanisms that we come up with. We can never shame ourselves for the behaviors that we've adopted because we didn't know better than to emotionally regulate. The only thing that we get to add is loving awareness of those behaviors and to get curious about what there is to feel underneath the surface, right? Like if I'm about to reach for food, then I'm aware that I'm trying to metabolize some emotion, and all I have to do is be like, okay, is there something that I get to sit with now or not? Like for example, one day I was sitting with my friends, and it was before I went on my like 4-month trip solo with one suitcase, and I had no idea where I was going to go, and I guess there was a little bit of tension building up in me because there was some uncertainty. And so we were sitting around, and I was like eating a lot, and I was like, gosh, I don't usually eat this much. And I told my friends, I was like, I'm eating a lot and I don't really usually eat this much. I'm like eating even though I'm full and I don't want to eat more. And they're also coaches, and they were like, okay, so what is it, like slow down for a second, like what are you feeling? And I just shared what I was feeling, and then one of them said, I think that you need to know that we really care about you, and we're gonna miss you, and we love you so much. And in that moment I was like, whoa, wow, okay, I received that. I just filled up my cup, I replenished my emotions and my inner awareness and reconnected to my heart and my love. And now I don't want to eat anything anymore. And I was like, oh, I just like I was done with that meal. So that's just like one example of just bringing awareness into what's going on underneath the surface all the time. And to know that if we are in the mind, we're not in the body. And we use the mind very often to not feel. Like if you are overthinking, it is a strategy to get out of your feelings and out of your bodily sensations, because we don't experience joy or sadness in the head, we experience it in the body, right? So that's one of the things that I always say, just like be mindful of when your mind is like going into overdrive, and just slow down and connect to your breath, which I'm sure.
Yeah, when you look at stomach, and you were talking about etymology with the Greek over there, you look at stomach, it's storage of energy. Sto, mech, storage of energy.
Wow.
So when it comes to more so the sense of obsessing over healthy eating in itself, because deep down in your subconscious, you're saying, I'm gonna suppress what my stomach is feeling at this moment, beyond just physically eating. Binging is okay, but I'm talking about the psychosis behind it, like you were diving into. And I really think that's important when you can um, build that emotional intelligence to redirect from obsessiveness to more in a healthy manner of having that dialogue, that inner dialogue with your emotions before you even eat.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Just checking in with yourself.
checking in.
All it is connection to your inner landscape. That's it. It's just being in presence and in intimacy with what is going on in your inner world.
Mm. And when you regulate the breath, you regulate those inner emotions. And I always say, like, whenever you fart, poop, or burp, belch, however you want to describe it, any subconscious release, that's a great time to, or sneeze, that's a great time to really uh, set affirmations behind it as well, because that is literally your subconscious releasing itself.
Yeah.
And you can't really control that. It
Yeah.
just
Yawning.
releases. Yawning is one
huge.
too.
Whenever I'm journaling or if I'm meditating and I'm releasing something, and I don't even have to know what it is, because the mind will want to know what I'm releasing. But you don't need to know. Your body is so intelligent. It knows exactly what it's doing. It doesn't need this organ up here to intervene, to butt in, like none of that. Your body takes care of itself, and you can let it lead you, right? You can let it lead you, and we live in a very heady world now, which is disconnected from the thing that actually runs the show, which is this thing, right? Um, and so it's really about, yeah, like when you set the intention to release, your body responds, and you start yawning, and you have tears streaming down your cheeks, and your body is just like doing that natural cleansing, that inner maintenance by itself. And it moves through pure intention, because energy moves through pure intention.
Mm-hmm.
And like our supporters in the other realms, or guides, or whatever you want to call it, they can't intervene and support us in our healing unless we ask for it, because we have free will. So we have to constantly be in the asking of, or requesting of, you know, giving that universal energy, like molding it, giving it an instruction. Just like we give our subconscious mind instructions.
Right.
All the time. Give the subconscious mind the instruction that you want to align with your highest timeline, that you want to release densities that no longer serve you, that you want to, connect to dormant energy that you haven't felt in a long time. And it will respond to that. It's just about being in dialogue, like you said.
And you can be doing the most simplest of things, like washing the dishes. And a nice little affirmation you can say was, as I'm washing the dishes, I'm washing any unwanted thoughts from my brain. Because you're not lying to yourself. So this is for definitely people who really can't connect with some things we said, but the simplest thing you can do is, while you're washing dishes, literally say, I'm accepting more of this cleansing energy into my life from any unwanted thoughts, any thoughts that are dense and doesn't serve me to my highest potential. Those are some practices you can do. And going back into yawning, I notice when some people do the breath work with me, they're yawning a little bit afterwards.
Yeah.
And I notice, like, different types of breath work, you'll feel a sudden spike of energy versus the yawning. But I really focus on more in the parasympathetic rather than the sympathetic, which is puts you into a different state.
Yeah.
So it's not that you're tired, it's just that you haven't felt such a calmness of energy in a while, especially if you're yawning after that. That's how I can tell too. And the more they do the breath work, the less they yawn afterwards. It's more of different releases, like crying maybe, or just random laughter,
Yeah.
or just random laughter, whatever it is. But going back into that, you're building up that connectiveness to a subtle part of you that you literally been suppressing. It's not that you're tired, it's just that there's such an overwhelmness of calmness in your energy field that you have never experienced before. And that's why it's actually great to take a nap afterwards, because I do get that a lot. I feel like, man, I feel like I can take a nap. Well, yeah, so your body can get adjusted
Your body
to
needs
that
to
energy.
integrate.
Yeah.
Absolutely, because our body, so our body is usually the last or the slowest in integrating any energetic or emotional changes. And so if we are doing a lot of inner work, we're doing a lot of journaling, releasing, crying, having breakthroughs, realizations, energetic shifts, like emotional cleansing, the body still needs to catch up and match that new energetic matrix that you just installed. Like you just updated your iOS system, right? Your
Exactly.
operating system. And so your body needs to reboot. So you need to like turn it off for a while, allow yourself to rest, allow yourself to replenish, and then your body will come back like 2.0, or 3.0. And it just allows it to catch up. And integration takes time. We don't realize, but we need to allow ourselves to rest. We're cyclical beings, right? We're expanding and then we're contracting, and we're resting and integrating, and then we're expanding again, and then like it's just a constant cycle of like it's this Olympian training for you to do that resistance or
Right.
muscle lifting or muscle training for you to like keep on stepping into your most powerful, embodied, sovereign self.
Yeah, and that goes into aligning rather than chasing, because you can't you can't really chase I say this in terms of the breath, that the breath needs to arrive at that destination and then life will follow. And life, I mean in the sense of whatever you perceive life as, your day-to-day career, whatever it is in that moment in time, relationships, and I mean relationships in all forms of life, because life as we perceive it is more in the physical, but the breath is so light, nothing travels faster than light.
Yeah.
So when you align the breath, which is your light energy, the spirit, life will follow.
Absolutely. Yeah, in my weekly classes, I always remind everyone who attends, like as we do journaling exercises in every single class, and I always I would say maybe 5 times per class, I say remember to keep on breathing, because sometimes we don't realize that we stop breathing when we're thinking hard about something or getting in touch with a different part of ourselves. Like our breath, literally, we hold our breath out of nowhere, and usually we hold our breath when we don't want to feel. So the moment you start feeling, that energy can flow again, which means you can feel again, right? So it's so important to be so aware of where we contract our breath and where there's dips in our breath rhythm, to notice, because it's feedback about whatever our inner system is going through. Would you agree?
Yes. I always say this in terms of, when you look at the lungs on the exhale, the lungs will contract and parts of the alveoli in the lungs contract. It's not actually on the inhale, it's more on the exhale. But you need that constant flow back and forth. All right, so where were we? We were about, contracting.
Yes, the lungs.
The lungs. So more on the lungs, when it contracts, the alveoli expands. So that tells you that the whole body expands more on the exhales rather than the inhales. The inhales, body contracts. And no, sorry. The body contracts more on the exhales rather than the inhales. On the inhales, the body is doing more work, saying, what am I going to do with this external substance, such as oxygen, some little microbiomes and things like that. So when you look at that, when you have that continuous flow, contraction, especially with the exhales, is literally what we do in life. That is literally the contracting part. It's literally what we do. And the things that we don't do is more so of the inhales. And I mean by in terms of resting, mind work, mind exercises, things of that nature. That's what I mean. That's like the inhale of life. And the exhale is really our expressiveness. because if we know that the body expands more on the exhales, that's expressive emotion in itself.
Yeah. Yeah. I love that, and I would also tie that back to the nature of growth, because the nature of growth is that we will experience resistance. If we are if we aren't experiencing resistance, then we won't necessarily be growing, right? Just like with muscles, like unless you are like feeling resistance, that's why they call it resistance training, then you're not growing that muscle, right? And so often, whenever we are in a period of discomfort or resistance, we have to know that in that moment we are like becoming bigger, stronger, like we're growing so much in our being, so that we're capable of doing things that we once weren't capable of doing, but it feels quote unquote uncomfortable. But that's a good thing. We need to celebrate that resistance, celebrate that discomfort, because it is just like the natural process of our being to grow.
That also ties into the essence of growth. It's only part of our nature, and when we restrict things that help us grow, going back to resistance, that is biofeedback from life, our body itself, really connecting all at once, telling us, here's a path, that's a path. Some people say, oh, I don't know what I'm going to do in many different types of situations. Well, what's giving you the most resistance right now? Dig a little deeper and let's see what we can get into that path and make multiple paths within a path.
Yeah, absolutely. Um, yeah, I would also say that when it comes to expanding, like you said, we're constantly growing. That's the nature of us. Like the universe is always expanding, and we are always expanding. And something that gives us a sense of fulfillment in life is if we are growing, right? Even if it's called, there's something that we call the progress principle, which basically means like if you are making some form of progress or expansion, even if it's just 1% a day, it gives you this feeling of fulfillment, right? It's so, because we're meant to be constantly expanding. And for us to constantly be expanding, we have to allow ourselves to like go into our desires and to expand our level of receiving from life. Like we have to allow ourselves to keep on becoming more and more and more, which means like allowing more blessings into your life, allowing more miracles into your life, allowing you to expand more, allowing more life force energy to flow through you, right? And on that note, it reminds me of how they say that a lot of like artists who end up, being in front of millions of people, like singers like Michael Jackson and all that, they have so much life force energy channeling through their bodies that they don't actually know how to even manage that properly, that they end up having to find a way to diffuse that overcharge to their system through drugs, through alcohol, through, that's what we see with a lot of, singers or celebrities, that there's so much flowing through them, so much life force, because they have to like have a capacity to hold the energy and the attention of so many other beings that they aren't able to like hold that, and they need to remove the charge through these forms because they've never been taught how to diffuse and slowly have that energy management and that energy hygiene on a regular basis of that self-regulating, releasing the pressure out of the pressure cooker over time. And so it builds up, and then they get hooked on these coping mechanisms and these drugs or alcohol. And so it's really about learning, again, it goes back to right what we started with, your energy management, right? Your self-regulation with your body, which knows what to do if we allow it to do what it wants to do. And if we allow its innate intelligence to lead us.
That when I work with singers and people that do public speaking of that nature, any celebrity that who's always in the limelight. Uh, Literally, one of the mantras that I share with them is that um, everyone is breathing with you. And like when they're in the crowd, when they're singing or they're whatever they're doing, tell them to just focus on other people's noses if you can. So try to do that, and that brings you just back to harmonious tension because some people, when you're watching anything, the body doesn't know the difference. Whether that's like, oh, is that my body and I'm seeing a reflection of myself? That's why it's really bad to watch horror movies, and that's why when you do watch horror movies, that's why you're in that fight or flight state, because your body doesn't know the difference. They're seeing
you're in that scene.
You're in that scene. You're part of it. You're playing a part of it energetically. You're stringing a chord along with it.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, that also makes me think of how we mirror each other's body language when we're feeling in harmony with someone or when we're feeling in resonance with their energy, right? We kind of mold ourselves to match them because we're becoming an energetic one.
And there's a simple exercise everyone can do is match breathing. Match breathing is whenever someone could be talking to you frantically, whatever it is, and you can just tell how much of a frantic state they're in. And what you can do is like on their exhale, you'll literally be matching how they're speaking. Whenever you notice, whenever they're taking an inhale, you take an inhale with them, and whenever they're talking, that'll be your exhale. And then what you can do is you're matching them, and then you can tone it down yourself, and you'll see how they'll react and tone it down a little bit.
Wow, I love that. It makes so much sense. It's just like, it's such a primal, instinctive, way of regulating the nervous system. And when it comes to the nervous system, I've also noticed that the more inner work that we do, and the more we soothe our own nervous system, the more other people's nervous systems feel safe around us. I've really noticed that in the last few years when I've done all of this work around making my nervous system a safe place to be, and having done, so much work around it, and so much unpacking and adding love to places that I didn't know needed love and all of this stuff, that transmits to these systems of anyone I come into contact with, which is the most beautiful blessing, right? You literally don't need to do anything, and just by your own beingness, you bring ease to others. Isn't that such a amazing, wonderful part of life, that it's just your own system and your own voice, when you're in that state, transmits the energy and signals to the other person that they are safe, that they are loved, and allows their system to relax, be at ease, to feel soothed, right? So it's not even about the words that we're transmitting, because the words are only 30% of what we're really transmitting. It's the energy, it's the tone of voice, it's the pace. That's what's really transmitting, right? Words are just things that we have chosen to describe and label energy. And so ultimately, when we're really transmitting in this entire conversation, it's just an energetic signature, right? The vibratory signature. So anyone who doesn't even speak English can be listening to this and picking up on that.
Yeah, I was when we were at Jeff's gathering the other day. I was sitting down, music was going, and I forgot who sat next to me, but she said, just turned around and said, "You have such a warm energy about you." I was like, "Oh, thank you so much." And
that's when I first met you guys. When I literally saw you guys sitting underneath this thing. I don't remember. I think it was May or something, and I was walking by the water, and I was like, "Oh my gosh!" I just feel in such energetic resonance with these two people sitting over here. I want to be in contact with these souls, and that's an instant recognition, and there's resonance. And there's a book that's called The Celestine Prophecy, which talks about how whenever you make eye contact with someone, and there's a feeling of recognition, it's because there's meant to be an contract, no matter how small that exchange might be. It might be just like one word of kindness. It might be, like a 5-minute conversation. It might be a friendship of a few years. You have no idea what it can be. But just always, whenever you feel that pull, that magnetism towards someone, know that it's just because like you're an energetic resonance and you're meant to like have an exchange with that person.
Mm, that is that's very true. It's very true. It takes 3 days for. Oh, by the way, Gabby is the first person that greeted us here in Miami. She's basically our first Miami friend. So she literally was the portal opening towards community here, and we're very honored to have met you for sure.
Absolutely. You guys are such a gift to the Miami community. And like we're just like seeding the light in this place. And we're like little nodes that just light up on the grid of energy on the planet. And we're just like bringing that here. And
Well, let's talk about that. We were talking about that the other day about Miami. Instead of being
yeah.
party central, because that's what many people think it is.
Yeah, it needs a conscious rebrand, right? Because you will find whatever you are in a city. And right now, the people who are being called to come here, like if someone is in another state or another country and they're like, I feel like I should go to Miami, like the reason that they are being called here is because there's something here for them, something in the energy that's shifting, that they might need to, come in and like raise that frequency here, or bring their energy into the mix. And I would say that in the last 3 years that I've been living here, since I moved from London, this city has like increased its conscious events and energy and gatherings and connection and community like 200 times from what it was 3 years ago.
And I want to say, I definitely want to talk about, if you go looking for party, if you go looking for whatever, that's what you'll find. If you go looking for more conscious people, or you just radiate, and trust me, it's just like a coconut grove.
Yes.
That is where most like healthy things are,
Yeah.
and we tend to find
People who are
like-minded
matched to that.
people. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And also, one thing on that is that the most dominant frequency will always lift up the other frequencies to match it, right? So the most dominant frequency in a room, in a city, in a place, like the energy in a room will equalize itself and be pulled towards that dominant frequency. And so even if we go into a place that is quote unquote lower vibration, or there's a level of, unconsciousness around maybe drinking a lot or whatever it is, whatever you want to call it, you go in there and you can hold the frequency and hold the vision for everyone around you to rise to that frequency, to that higher vibration, to that level of consciousness, into their higher self. Like that's the most beautiful thing that we can be of service to others, is hold that vision for humanity, hold that vision for people, and speak into the possibility of who they are, speak into their potential. It's like hold them to their greatness and to what they're capable of.
That also ties back into spiritual hygiene, because many people in the conscious community, at least when I dip my toe back into society, I can tell that, people are demeaning people that way, be like, you don't need that way, you don't need this way, blah, blah, blah. And I noticed this going into Burning Man myself. I always said, people are going to act this way, people are going to act that way. And then when I'm there, I could just tell the sense of community and love that outpours more than usage of psychedelics or whatever it is that was going on there. That shone and shined, if you will, radiated a lot more than all the other activities, and that was more of the sense you could definitely feel in that resonance. You could definitely feel that literally in that resonance. And that opened my mind and literally shed the judgmental side of my being and then that some people are getting coconuts over here. Yeah, but
Welcome to Miami.
welcome to Miami. Yeah, but that helped me be less judgmental, and the less judgmental I was, the more I expanded in terms of building community with others, and deep down, going back into your soul radiating at a higher frequency to those who are not radiating. The point is to lift up, because at the end of the day, it's going to touch their frequency in that sense. So that's the point,
Yeah.
and that's the truth.
And again, it's not like I was leading a class on yesterday, Tuesday morning, about how our purpose is not something we do, our purpose is something we be.
Say that again.
Our purpose is not something that we do, it's something that we be. Like, we didn't come here to do something to, like, find our purpose and do it. Like, our purpose, our primary purpose is to be. And our primary purpose is to be love. Our primary purpose is to be kindness. Our primary purpose is to be connection, right? And so, like, just our beingness is enough to inspire and shift and change frequencies, consciousness, cities.
Powerful. So when I speak to Miami natives that's been here for well over 10 years, every time they talk about how it was never like this in terms of consciousness, in terms of conscious gatherings and things of that nature. Never like this. All these years, they said it was never like this at all. And then every time they say that, I was like, I'm really surprised. Like, yeah.
Well, it's a tipping point, right?
It's a tipping point.
Malcolm Gladwell talks about how when you reach a certain percentage where there's a word for it, it's like it's not the boiling point, it's like there's something, they say that when 2% of the earth reaches a certain level of consciousness, that's it, like, that's how you start a movement. And then it spreads and spreads and spreads. And like that's what the tipping point is. So here, it needed to reach a certain like maximum point, or gosh, I can't remember what the word is, but yeah, it needed to reach a certain point in order for it to start like
convergence.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Yeah, and also the beliefs, right? Our beliefs create our reality. So if you come to Miami thinking that that's all you're going to find, then that's all you're going to find. I literally came here, from the moment I came here, I was like, I can't wait to find heart-centered, beautiful, giving, loving, connected souls. And that is the only thing that I have had the honor of coming into contact with since I've been here. Like, that is all I see. Like, I live in a bubble, and I love my bubble, because the more that I can, create a tipping point around souls who come into that energetic frequency, into that way of being, into that, desire to give, be of service, the more that spreads, the more that it reaches 2% in the city, and then it just, spreads even more.
And I want to talk about the judgmental energy itself, because if you're always spewing, oh, this is bad, that's bad, that bad, in a more, the energy, like we were saying, the energy speaks louder than the words itself, right? So if you're coming more of, from a harmonious standpoint of, hey, if you're trying to help someone go into a healthier diet, right? Instead of spewing hate at them, you're like, hey, have you ever thought about why this affects that? Why this affects that? Maybe you should look into this and that. It's a good read,
We can never transform through shame or judgment. We can only transform through love and acceptance. And if we were to apply that with ourselves, with all the behaviors that we want to fix, get rid of, that we judge, that we resist in ourselves, and instead treat it with love and acceptance, then we would be able to transmute and release the self, right? Like, it's all about allowing that energy of acceptance to be there and bring that energy of love, because that transmutes. Resistance is not transmute, right?
Going back to resistance.
Yeah. And when we resist in ourselves, persists in ourselves. Any behavior, any way of being.
Oh, very, very cool. judgmental energy will speak louder uh, than than the than the words itself. Really.
I mean, judgment, we're only ever, we can't see something that we don't like unless it's in us. So
Oh,
if
wow.
you spot it, you've got it.
Woo! Woo! You're on a roll today.
I'm a roll the rhymes. But truly, when you can't, anything that we judge is something that we are judging in ourselves, and maybe we are denying it so much in ourselves that we can't even see that it's in us. But we are incapable of judging something outside of us unless it exists within us. Unless it exists within us. And so they say, I think Deepak Chopra says, my quote unquote enemy is an exaggerated version of what I don't accept in myself. Who I call an enemy or who I judge is just an exaggerated version of what I don't accept in myself. So whenever I see something outside of myself that I find myself judging or not liking, I'm like, oh, okay, I just found something that's in me that I need to bring love to, that I haven't accepted, that I'm not integrating, that I've thrown into my shadow and I'm not allowing, right? Because when it comes to our shadows, exercise that I love doing in my coaching clients is that anything that we are shamed for in our childhood, like if we were called selfish when we were younger, when we were 5 years old, like maybe you're playing with a sibling and your mom says, oh, you're so selfish, blah, blah, blah.
Right.
In that moment, we're like, okay.
Or the don't care attitude.
Yeah, exactly. In that moment, we receive, shaming from a parent or whatever, and we're like, oh my god, if I am going to be loved, I want to belong, I can't be selfish. So the mind goes, what is the opposite of selfish? Selfless. Okay, I must become selfless in order to be loved, to be accepted. And so the people who we see that are like overly selfless now in their life might have been told at some point in their childhood that they were selfish, threw that in their shadow, was like, I can't show this side of me to the world, so let me become the opposite, because the opposite of it is acceptable, right? This happened to me as well. Like, when I literally had that in my school where I was called selfish at some point when I was 6 years old. I was like, oh my god, I can't be selfish. So I'm going to throw this into my shadow, never let myself, be selfish. I must become the opposite of that in order to be accepted, so I will be selfless. So what's the identity that I created? Oh yeah, Gabby, she's so giving, she's so caring, that's selfless. And of course it serves me, right? I was meant to go down that path. Right. But it's about like the pendulum swing and realizing that there's a healthy balance. And not like being selfless to the point of self-sacrifice or anything like that. Right?
I think even like how you said it becomes more than this balance. It just becomes more of knowing where the pendulum is swinging at that moment in time.
Yeah, exactly.
Because in terms of balance, we can look at these two trees right now. One is more straight, one is more crooked. But we may look at nature as being put on perfect in its own perfect way, in its own perfect manner. It's still doing. They're both doing the same thing, but expressing it in a different way.
Yeah. And another example relating to the shadow and whatever we are shamed for in our childhood, we're in our shadow, and we outward facingly become the opposite, right? So for example, if we're 6 years old and our father or whatever, someone judges us for being lazy or for like being unhealthy, then in that moment we're like, okay, in order for me to be loved and accepted by the person who I need love from, like my parents, I must throw this into my shadow and become the opposite of it, outward facing, right? So what does it mean? You become someone who's always productive, always on the go, because you can't be lazy because you won't be loved. So let me be an overachiever, right? Or if it's the healthy thing, or like, you're not being healthy, then let me become someone who is obsessed with fitness, because I definitely can't be the opposite. I can't be lazy, right? So it's so interesting how whatever our shaming or thing was in our childhood, we throw it in our shadow and we become the opposite of it, outward facing. Always. And so when we see something, we're like, oh, I can't stand it when people are being lazy. It's like, that's because you suppressed that you wanted to be lazy when you were 5 years old, and you're not allowing yourself to rest and be that. And it's okay. You have a judgment around lazy.
Right.
So allow yourself to integrate that and to allow yourself to rest and not see it as something negative, right? You see someone being selfish, it's because you suppress that within yourself. You see someone being promiscuous, it's because you suppress that within yourself.
And going back into selfishness, self or less. It's because we're all technically one self in a different manner. If we're looking at the outside view from a zoom out point of view, perspective, you can see that it's one inhale, one exhale. Everyone is exhaling. Some people are exhaling at the same time. Some people are inhaling at the same time.
Yeah.
It's just one connected flow.
Well, universe, right? Universe stands for like one verse, one song, right?
Oh yeah, uni one
Yeah.
verse of
Yeah.
the song.
One song.
That was energetic. Well, you want to end it off there? You want to tie into many things? I think we can end it off there. That was perfect.
We can go on for days.
Yeah, we could. Maybe next time. Especially when you move back. Can't wait. Maybe we can make this into a series. Well, I thank you all for sharing your breath. Yvonne, the Black Airbender here with you. And where can we find you?
I'm on Instagram as